Hey everybody, John Peters again from the Main Street Business Alliance, and this is the Main Thing podcast, all about small business, many times about Hackensack small business, but everything that we talk about applies everywhere. And today, I am blessed and honored to be joined by two of my favorite podcast people. Yes. So you guys are on the opposite side today. Noelle and Eric?
Yes, we're excited to be on the opposite side. We don't
I know.
We don't have to ask the questions.
No questions. We're
ready.
just answering.
Yes.
Well, the really neat part about this is that I told you I'm writing this book all about business marketing, right? And that takes it from the day you open and further. But I've noticed as I'm going up and down Main Street talking to people and working with other small businesses across the country, there's a whole bunch of stuff that has to get done before you turn those keys for the first day. And I'm seeing firsthand some of the great work that's paying off and some of the work that maybe was overlooked that is very clearly problematic, right? So coming to you guys as very knowledgeable in the real estate industry, and we're going to have a bunch of people talking about marketing and email and database and all that, but I'm like, no, we've got to go up 30,000 feet. We got to step back. You know, what should they be looking for? I'm of the opinion, tell me if I'm wrong, I see people walk in and go, I want to be in Hackensack, I'll take that spot because it's available. Well, is it the right spot? Did you check the foot traffic? I mean, what are some of those things that you guys, from a real estate / business perspective, what should these people be looking
Sure.
at?
Yeah, we think about that all the time.
We do. And one thing that you say is you can change anything about a space except
The location.
the location,
Yes.
location.
Yeah. Okay.
He is famous for drilling that into everyone.
I try, yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
You know, we have our real estate business, we have our school business, we're developers, we have a bunch of different things. It's all about knowing what your niche is or what your customer is. Mm-hmm. If you know what your customer is, then you can identify where you need to be. Mm-hmm. So we do a ton of leasing on Main Street in Hackensack, as well as other places in New Jersey. Mm-hmm. People come to Hackensack because they hear all the exciting things that are going on here. But as we're growing, you know, we don't necessarily have the foot traffic today, but the foot traffic should be here as we go in the next 2, 3, 4 years. I always tell people, understand who your customers are, because if you just think you're going to hang out your shingle, open the door,
And then all of a sudden people are going to come trampling in.
Right, yeah, sure.
It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
You know, that's easier if you're a restaurant, but if you're another type of business, it's harder. So
I would also think if you're one of those destination businesses, someplace where people are going online anyway and they want a brick and mortar that maybe they can stop in, if this is supplementing your online, then, or if you're the only place where you can get Pakistani product goods, you know what I mean? That the whole Pakistani community is now going to come to you for that spice that they can't get anywhere else. But truthfully, you have to do your homework.
yes,
You must do your homework.
And there's demographics out there available online. You know, any good broker will be able to get you demographics for a town before you move into that space. And you know, the big thing that I always tell people, just like if you were going to buy a house, you would stalk it. Go stalk your space.
Right.
Walk the block.
Yep.
Check it out on a Saturday. Check it out
all
on a Sunday.
different times.
Check it out.
During the the
Check
heat
it
wave.
in the evenings.
Nice and cool. Right. Whenever.
Right. And
In the
then,
middle of a snowstorm.
you know, in Hackensack, we're very lucky because we have a business improvement district, which obviously you had. So, you know, you're available to talk to people. People should find out what their local groups are, whether it's the business improvement district, Chamber of Commerce.
Yes.
Is there someone, you know, in charge of the economic development for that location?
Right.
Go talk to people. Find out what are the trends. Are things moving up or things moving down?
And you'll always have someone who's part of the EDC, the Economic Development Corporation, or a committee, or even if it's one person at City Hall who does economic development, and they can help you, and it's their job to help you. And having a business improvement district, well, if you find an area with a bid, take advantage of every single thing they do. Get the signage done. Get an awning. You know, talk to the people who are on the street. Talk to their green and clean team because they know.
Sure.
Those guys know. They're out on the street every single day. They know who passes by.
Yeah, and they also may know, like, hey, don't take that location because you know the kids get out of school here, and for 2 hours a day you have 4,000 people blocking your traffic.
Right.
You know, it's good to talk to the boots on the ground, whoever's there, talk to the local police, ask questions.
Yep.
Well, so that's a great piece of advice, because I've walked into places and I'll say, how did you pick this spot? They go, well, what do you mean? I go, well, why'd you pick, we'll get into the why'd you pick Hackensack, but why'd you pick this one? And they look at me like it's the craziest question. And I'm like, wait a minute. Well, first of all, what are you selling? And they tell me. I'm like, well, how many of those do you need to sell to cover this rent?
Yep.
And they're like, well, you know, this is what we do. I'm like, no. There needs to be a number. What's the number? How many of these widgets, services, pizza slices, coffees, I don't care what it is, how many need to sell to cover this rent? And I am very often amazed at the people who don't know the answer to that. And I just feel like they should be working more closely with the realtors, with the brokers, with, like you said, the Main Street Business Alliance in this case. We have so much data. I'm happy to share, by the way, a trend report that says, you know, here's 1,400 responses from last year, and they indicated what they want to see on Main Street.
Yeah.
Are you one of these? You're golden.
If I was opening up a goods store, something where I had to go in, walk in, purchase something, I would totally go sit in my car right outside with one of those little event clickers and click. I wouldn't pay for the report, probably.
Right.
Like, you can go to
It's
a
a free
company
report.
and
Sure.
no,
It's
but
free.
well, maybe
Yeah.
from the bid, but you can go to companies who
and
charge
buy,
you thousands of dollars
Yeah.
to get, you know, foot traffic reports. But I would sit there and just, in a day, whole day, take a day just to see how many people walk past that door.
Right.
You know, how many people do I get in front of? Whether I'm putting a sandwich board out there, whether, you know, I'm selling chicken and I put someone in a big chicken suit to go outside and pass out flyers, whatever I need to do.
Right, sure.
I want to know.
I mean, that's a great idea, the chicken suit. I know there's a place on Main Street, Liberty Tax, they have
Yeah,
a guy dressed
the guy-
as Statue
Yeah,
of Liberty.
Statue of
He
Liberty.
used to do my taxes.
Yeah, and I would honk at him every time I drove by, just in like solidarity of,
Yeah.
you know.
It does. He holds up a sign saying honk if something, right?
Yeah.
But and he's out there in all sorts of weather, by the
He
way.
is. Rain, shine, snow. Another great place to start is go talk to your neighbors. So you're looking at taking, you know, a space mid-block. Go talk to the stores on the right, the left, across the street. Get a flavor for what they're saying. Now, don't always take that as gospel, because they may not want you there.
Sure.
Okay? But just go talk to them. See if they're going to offer you advice. You know, maybe they're going to say, oh, you know, the building department is great. Or they may say, oh, the zoning department sucks. Like, who knows what they're going to tell
And people
you.
love to complain, so they're
just
going to tell you
go
all the
and
bad things.
Get a feedback and understand what you're going to be dealing with when you move into that town or into that area.
If you rent to 10 people, how many people are doing it right? How many people are doing everything you just said? I mean, if you had a...
So let's classify.
Are there any?
There's the mom. So there's the mom and pops versus the franchises versus
corporate. Yeah.
So everybody makes mistakes, but corporate usually has their stuff figured out. They have their documentation. They know what it's like to go forward and get a landlord to accept them. Franchises also have it figured out because they have someone teaching them, and that's corporate, that's explaining this is what you need. You know, yes, you have to handhold because they may not know as the person, but at least they have a resource. Then you have the mom and pops, who you have some that are experienced and have 2 other locations, and then you have the startups, and they have no idea what's going on. You know, you have to, as a broker, it's my job to protect the landlord and the tenant. So if you don't have enough money to do what you're doing, I need to recognize that and question you and say, all right, you have 70 grand in the bank. You're going to take a store that's going to rent out for $5,000. Okay. You should have at least 6 months worth of rent after you open, after all your expenses.
Right.
So they want to take a space and turn it from a blank canvas into a restaurant, and they only have 70 grand. How do you do that?
I have a question for both of you. So, is there a way to go to the town and find out what is opening in an area in the upcoming months? Because I know in a town that we all know, a bunch of coffee shops opened, and then down the block, a Starbucks opened. Did they know that the Starbucks was opening?
So that's a yes and no answer. If you have a good broker, that's why I'm a big fan of going with people that know your area. So if you came to me specifically for downtown Hackensack, I know 80% of what's going on.
Okay.
And if I didn't know and someone had a question, I know the people to ask
You
that
could
could
find
fill
out
me
from.
in on the other 20%.
Sure.
So try to find that person that's going to help you answer those questions. You know, are there surprise attacks? Sure.
Yeah.
You know, there are things that I do sometimes that I don't want people to know about until the very last second. So there's ways of hiding stuff, but typically it doesn't happen. And if you ask enough questions, you'll be able to know.
Right. If you're opening a pizzeria and then, you know, half a block away you have a Pizza Hut or a Domino's that opens, you're going to...
Perfect example. In downtown Hackensack, we have a restaurateur named Benny. He owns a Cuban restaurant.
It's very good.
And he's been with me. So I've been in Hackensack downtown, God, feels like forever, but at least
since
20.
God was a baby, basically.
Right. Since I was almost a baby. But so it's been at least 20 years. And I remember buying some of my first properties and renovating those buildings. And one day I ran into Benny, or Ben, and he was renovating the building next door to me because he was opening his first restaurant.
Right.
And we became friends, and, you know, we're still friends to this day, 20 years later. But he'll always say to you, I welcome other restaurants. Competition is good. You know, the more restaurants we have here, that's a great thing because now we become a restaurant destination.
Right.
But what about if it's another Cuban restaurant who's selling the
I think Ben is confident
things?
enough and his food is great where he's not worried about that. But I just thought it was interesting from his perspective as a restaurateur. He didn't want to be the only restaurant. He welcomed it.
Right.
You know, if you're a coffee shop, you're going to say, I don't want any other coffee shops. So it was just an interesting perspective that he taught me, you know, I guess about 10 years
Restaurants in general, though,
Yeah.
like to do that, right? They like to be in clubs. You can't
Not
eat
all restaurants, but
you
the
can't
smart
eat
ones.
Cuban food every night.
Right.
Every day.
So
right.
if you
If
like
there's
come
a
to
Greek
the area and you
place,
like
Italian,
it, and
Cuban,
Greek,
right.
So as it pertains to Hackensack, I counted. You could eat out every night for almost a month, and not overlap on the food.
Right. There's almost
a lot
every
of
culture
similarities,
down
but
here.
but it's really fascinating, and that's what I'm saying. But now, turn the tables, and you're like, you know, a nail salon, or how many nail salons do you need? Although sometimes people argue
I don't need any nail salons.
well, you know, or
hair salons.
Maybe my
There's
wife
a
tells me
lot
I
of
should
hair
go.
salons
Salons,
here.
barbershops.
Barbershops.
Barbershops are good.
So I'm a big proponent of the customer journey, right? Whether it's a digital journey or walking something, right? So I like to look at, okay, we have all these new people living here. What's their experience as they walk down? I mean, if they walk down, there's times I walk down Main Street, and it is the most awesome experience. Like, people are out, the weather's great, people going in and out of stores, and then I'll pass a barbershop, and there's 3 guys inside on a mobile phone. Now, granted, they're busy at different times. They're not all busy, so I don't want to say that that's the gospel, that I happen to walk by that place at this, because they're still there, right? So they're getting enough business. But as it pertains to the customer journey and what someone like a small business should look for, are they missing something? Are they? I don't know. I look at the opportunities to come in, and I'm wondering if anybody did any homework. I'm wondering if they even considered what it's like to walk through here.
You have to look. You have to do at least enough to know your demographic. If you're moving down here where there are a million 1- and 2-bedroom apartments going up.
Right.
Who is living in a commuter town with 1- and 2-bedroom apartments? Young professionals, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So what do they need? They're going to need a really cute boutique when they have a last minute business meeting next day and they need a new blouse.
Right.
They are going to need to buy little gifts and stuff on the weekends, and maybe they don't want to go to the mall. What will they need?
Right.
And it's not just food. It's not just beauty. And I don't think
Entertainment.
Entertainment, yes. They want to be able to do something close to home. And if someone's moving to Hackensack, they want to be somewhat walkable.
So you recall the trend report we did last year.
do.
And shockingly, a couple of questions had some write-ins, so that we don't know everything. We'd love to have some write-ins. One of the top things that people said they wanted, again, 1,400 people who told us what they wanted from Main Street. And I imagine this is the same in a lot of different places. They wanted someplace to be able to hang out.
Yes.
Without being forced to buy a meal, without being forced to sit at a bar. Like, where can I just, I want a little nibble, I want a little something
Maybe
to drink.
I do, right.
But,
Well, that's what the coffee shops are for, right? You buy a cup of coffee and you can hang out.
right.
Forever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. But they want that.
Right.
So to your point about what else do they need, you have to consider things like that. So trend report.
Now, do you offer the trend report to anyone who's looking at space here?
Yeah.
Because people need to get that trend report. I would go to your Economic Development Corporation or your BID or your SID, whatever you have, and ask, do you know what people are looking for here?
Yeah.
Have you done a report? And you might be the person that gets them to do a report because you've asked.
And because we can't just do one and let it get stale, right?
Right.
So we have to do this every year. We have to have a certain amount of same questions so that we can see the trend.
Yeah.
But also some new questions. So, we've partnered with the library. We're going to be partnering with the Performing Arts Center this year. What are the 4 burning questions? I know the library actually made a bunch of decisions based on that trend report.
Smart.
They now offer books by mail. They have pop-ups. One of the questions was, would you consider getting a book from someplace other than the library? What would be easier? And everybody said, mall. Well, they opened up a pop-up library at the mall.
Wow.
Smart.
So I think it's one day a week.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. So it's that whole out of the box. Let me take the data, and am I suggesting we open up a library, next door to, in the mall? No, but a little pop-up store. They cut a deal with the folks that run the place, and it's a pretty successful
That
program.
works for them. So yeah, it makes sense.
But if I was moving to Hackensack, I would want everything to be walkable. I mean, that's why when I was married my first time, the test husband, right? We bought a condo down on Prospect in Hackensack.
Okay.
And the reason we did that,
You mean up on Prospect?
wherever, north, south,
Downtown,
east, west.
uptown.
Right.
The reason
Moving
we did
on.
that was because I was from Manhattan and I refused to live somewhere that I couldn't walk to a store.
Right.
I was like, I need to be able to walk someplace. What do you mean I have to get in my car and drive? What happens if my car breaks down?
Right.
There's no public transportation that's going to take me 5 blocks.
Sure.
I got used to New Jersey and now I drive everywhere. But if you're moving to Hackensack,
Jersey-itis.
yeah, you want to be walkable. And how do
Yes.
you make your downtown as walkable as possible?
I think it's awesome. I've been in downtown Hackensack for, as I said, over 20 years. And just watching how when I used to walk back in the day and how I walk now, like to see the families and the strollers and, the dogs.
It's amazing.
It's
and the
a
dogs in
total
strollers,
change.
by the way.
The dogs
Yeah, I
and
have seen
strollers.
that.
There's more than a few of
Yeah.
those. I'm like, I go walk up to, you want to see somebody's baby, and there's this,
like,
little
woof.
overweight Yorkie in there
Yeah.
that hasn't stepped on the ground for days and months.
But that could be a good thing. It actually keeps, maybe they let him go to the bathroom in that stroller too.
Or at least they get him somewhere because, well, he knows it's a big challenge here, right? More
Keep
people
your
equals
dog
more dogs.
off the grass, or what do our signs say?
Do you like our new plants? Please let your dog know that we already watered them.
Unfortunately,
Yes, don't
people would
water our
probably
plants.
take it, but you could buy like hundreds of those baggies from Amazon for like $5 and put
did it.
little
He's doing it.
stations.
He's doing
So the stations are getting installed next week.
Yes.
Brilliant.
The first 5
You
anyway,
and I.
plus a bunch of other signs, and we're putting them. We didn't get the ones that include the garbage. We're going right by the garbage cans, so we're not trying to do any sign pollution or anything like
Right,
that.
right.
We're trying to just jump in front of it. The tactic I saw one gentleman do of yelling at his dog while he was peeing, like, "Why are you peeing there?" I'm
Because
like,
he's a dog.
Well, dogs can't hold their pee; they just pee.
Right.
I mean, I guess they can, but they just go out and pee, and maybe we have to train the owners. But that was something really funny, just to talk about since I brought up the dog thing.
Right.
Watching some of my property owners, whom we all used to complain years back about how we wanted more people and
Right.
we wanted buildings to change or whatever, and now we got all that. We never talked about dogs or pets in general.
Right.
And now instead of complaining about what we want about the buildings, now we're like, how do we get these dogs to go to the bathroom in the right place? It's like,
How do we get them to be human?
It's amusing.
It is. It is.
Well, I know that, I used to work for bids. I used to work for gentlemen such as yourself or ladies who are in the same position.
Right.
And one big thing is when you see women walking in the streets at night, late afternoon, with their strollers or their dogs, you know that your area is changing.
Sure.
You know what I mean? If women can walk the streets at night, then they feel comfortable. And, I think if you are a service provider or if you're a store or retailer or whatever and you're looking, you want to see who's walking the streets at night. Are people walking the streets at night?
Sure.
Are people is that area making a change towards being very populated? If it's an up and coming area,
Sure. Yeah.
And I just don't think people do enough hands-on. I'm going to get out there and I'm going to investigate the area where I'm going to open up the business that I have been planning in my head for the past 20 years.
Right.
It makes no sense.
Yeah, no, and that's part of where I get so exasperated, where I'm like, listen, I'm here to help. I'm happy to help, but there's some basic stuff you should have covered before you got to this office, and I would have been happy to help you then. So it's frustrating, but good news. Things are working. We've gotten some really good press lately in Hackensack, on Main Street in particular, and that's all a testament to it's a big group effort, right? Everybody from City Hall to the DPWs and everything that we're all doing. I think it's really turned around, and I'm excited about what's coming, and I see that as I travel around the country, go to other places. There's some really cool stuff happening, right? It just
the power of a downtown. People don't realize it unless they live in a town that doesn't have one. And, watching Hackensack from over the last, I don't know how old am I, 50s, over the last 40 years, it's just amazing to see all of the pieces that it has and all of the possibilities. And, we've struggled for so many years to make this place amazing. And I finally think we're getting there. And, having you as our fearless leader is certainly a benefit for us. And speaking as a board member on the board that you deal with every day, I know I'm happy to have you, and I see great things in our future.
I have a question for you.
For me?
How do we find a good commercial real estate agent? Because from what you were just saying, it's really all about the broker and the agent that you're working with being able to lead you in the right direction if you don't know anything. You know what you know, right?
Sure.
So how do we find a good one of you?
Sure.
Maybe they just need to come get you.
I mean, I try to be available for everybody, but unfortunately that doesn't happen. You have to find someone that actually is willing to listen to you. And unfortunately, the commercial real estate industry it's like the Wild West. There's really no rules. It's different than residential. Some brokers are great and they care and they want to help you. Other brokers don't care. They just want to lease a space or they just want to put a sign up. Try to find somebody who is actually going to talk to you, understand your business, and help you make a decision, not just stick you into a place where you're going to be out of business in 6 months. And as an owner of a building, you also want to make sure you find that broker that actually is going to show up to the showings, understand who that person that's coming in, you don't want to put a square peg in a round hole or whatever they do it, because if you try to force someone to take a space, it's just going to fail. It never works. It never works. And I don't force people. I get to know them. I try to talk to them. The first thing specifically in downtown Hackensack over the last 20 years, don't expect foot traffic here. You have to build it. You can make a lot of money on this street.
Right.
But you have to build your clientele.
Sure.
Don't think that from day one you're going to have 10,000 people running in the door. We're not there yet. This is not Manhattan where you're in Times Square and, oh my God, you could open anything there and there's 10 million people that are going to attack you the next day. You have to build it here. And most brokers don't they lie, or they just admit and they don't tell you the truth. Like, people are people. Treat people the way you want to be treated. Make sure you get a broker that's going to do that.
What's your biggest red flag? Like, if you were a retailer and you're meeting with a broker, what's the biggest red flag of something they could do to make you be like, this isn't the broker or the agent for me?
How they react to your questions about their client, or if you bring up a situation where you're like, does your client understand, that there's a foot traffic issue here, or does your client understand that, there's a zoning issue, or that, maybe they're only going to be able to sell half of their product here. And if that broker is just like, oh, don't worry about it, they got everything, and they just kind of dismiss it, I would say that would be an issue for me. Or if another broker doesn't let you talk openly in front of them and their client.
That's a good one.
I have the confidence.
That's a great one, right?
I always share, I always introduce the other broker. Brokers, everybody's hunting for that opportunity, but You have to have the confidence as a broker that no one's going to try to steal your client. And if they do, then let them go. But you have to be able to have an open conversation with the people there. Always introduce your clients to the people. Make everybody feel comfortable. If someone doesn't do that and they're hiding somebody, that would be a telltale for me.
Yeah, well, that was a good one.
Thank you.
That was a good one, right?
I wouldn't have imagined that one.
It happens all the time. Think of the scenarios where you walk into a room, someone doesn't introduce you, and they kind of like avoid the situation. Why are you doing that?
Right.
So there's a distrust somewhere, and you need to figure out what that is. Now, sometimes you can't avoid it,
Right.
but you just have to understand what it is. You know, it could be people are afraid they're going to lose a deal, or it could be someone's trying to hide something. So it's not always
nefarious.
a negative thing,
right.
or it's just you have to be able to understand what it is to make the determination.
I wish we had put a part about transparency in the book we have coming out, Real Estate Investing Made Simple. But we need to, the next book we need to put
All
whole
about
thing about
transparency.
transparency.
Yeah, I love being transparent. I think it's very important.
Transparency is key.
Yeah.
You know, having been on our board for God, it's like seems like forever. And I said that before, but it's at least 15 plus years, and just watching the different people that come through, the different. I'll give you an example. The people we've hired as a board to help us build this downtown, because none of us were experts. Right. You know, you're an expert in business, but you didn't build a city before. This is your first time doing this.
This is your first bid?
Yeah.
So
Wow.
he's learning.
And you're doing great.
He's doing
thank you.
better than most of the people we've had, or all of them. And you're learning as we go. And there are advisors that we come in that try to pitch stuff to sell us that are so obviously have no clue what they're doing, or they're stepping outside of their normal box. And it's like, just come to me, be like, hey, I haven't done this before, but I'm really excited about it. I think I could do it.
Sure.
That way I could actually maybe contemplate hiring you. But when you come to me and just give me this line of BS, you know,
Right.
don't waste our time.
So, I think we covered what people should be doing before they open a business, right?
Yes.
We covered how to spot some things that might be problematic. We covered data. We covered analysis, and we're going to get into a whole bunch of other things. What is there anything that I should have asked you guys that I didn't?
So for me, with business, don't be afraid to buck the trend. Don't be afraid to find that place that everybody's steering away from. You know, when I first found Hackensack 20-some years ago, nobody wanted to be here.
Right.
And I was like, I am going to go and I'm going to make my mark here and I am going to help change this. So I started investing, and then I got involved and I changed it. So, you know, people are like, oh, you're so lucky, because it wasn't luck. It was me deciding this is where I'm going to make my mark, and then me putting my time and effort into it. Don't be afraid to find that space for you or for your business. You don't have to go where everyone else is going. You can. That's certainly a strategy, but it doesn't have to be. Don't be afraid to try something different. Don't be afraid to go after something, but make sure you do your research. Research. Go stalk the place, understand what you're getting into, understand who your customers, and then go for it. You know, the most successful people with billions and millions of dollars will tell you they failed a ton of times, and those failures were just education for them. So go for it. Go do it.
I just read an article about Amazon's failures. It went back decades.
I can imagine.
Like all the stuff that they launched, and it was a complete tank. And people are like, well, if you look at this, it looks like a big list of failures. Well, it's not just failures, right? Those were all learnings that they used in some other things. And
Right.
It's Jeff learning how to build his business.
Yeah, sure is.
And I agree with Eric completely on that. You don't have to go to the Ridgewoods, and if you know anything about New Jersey, that's where everyone is, or you don't, go where, learn your demographic. You said research. Know who your client is.
Yeah.
If you don't know who your customer is, then how can you go to them? Because you want to be where they are.
Yeah. I spoke to Martin from Marty's Burgers.
Oh, I love those burgers.
So
and
great
the
burgers,
shakes.
right? But tiny little place.
Yeah.
And I was talking to him about why, first of all, why Hackensack, but also why this spot. And he's like, well, why Hackensack was easy for us. This is where our market is. The people here are our target market.
Yes, I am their target
Right?
market.
And
yes.
then, in particular, they've got two other locations.
They have good milkshakes.
Smack
They have
dab.
great
They do have great milkshakes. Smack dab in the middle of those two locations. In other words, there was a lot of thought that went into it, and I enjoy those conversations.
But also their location. If you look, they're right next to that chicken place and BEC Bagels, right?
Sure.
So the people who are going to go get burgers that may not be the healthiest and shakes that are amazing but may not be the healthiest are the same people who are going to get the fried chicken from the chicken place, which is very good as well, and they have great fries, and BEC Bagels, which has a lot of bacon, egg, and cheese. And,
right, yeah.
And so those same people are all going, and they might go to BEC Bagels one day, but then they're going to go to Marty's the next day.
Yeah, no doubt. He's knocking out of the park in there.
Yes.
Marty's is doing great. And just to give you a quick side story, I happen to be Marty's landlord.
Oh, are you? Please tell them to bring the coffee milkshake where they're going to put coffee in it.
Okay, I'll text
They
them. I'll
didn't
text them
do
after
that.
this.
They had it on their menu, then it went off.
We'll text them. Just remind me. But I actually had probably 5 applicants for that space because we lease out our own spaces. So we had a bunch of people, and Marty was not the highest paying tenant that was willing to go in that space. And I had to make a decision, and I actually went with a lower rent to get Marty's there because I felt they were the right mix for the street.
Right.
So
Good
the way they
job.
presented themselves when I did the client interview, there's like 4 young, it's 4 young people. They're like, between, I don't know, late 20s, early 30s, and the energy. And it was just like, we have these other locations and this is what we want to do. And I was just like, I'm going to take this tenant. I may lose a little bit of money, but they're going to be here for the next 10 years. So that's how I made my decision. So presentation, knowing your market, that won them the space. So
Wow.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
That's really wonderful. Okay, well, more of that, hopefully, right? That's
Yes.
what we're all
Let's
hoping
do it.
for. So thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
today. Thanks for popping in and sharing this stuff because, like I said, we're going to get into a whole section, issue after issue after episode about marketing your small business, growing your small business. But I just felt like there was some work to get done before that. You guys answered a lot of those questions. Thank you.